In the beginning, there was no sky, no land, no sea, no people. The earth existed, but it was empty and unformed, covered in darkness. Nothing had shape yet, nothing had a name. Over these deep waters, God's presence hovered, attentive and purposeful, like a quiet breath waiting to speak. Then God spoke. With a word, light came into existence, not from the sun or stars yet, just light itself. God separated the light from the darkness, calling the light day and the darkness night. Time itself began to move. Evening passed, then morning. This was the first day. Next, God spoke again and created a great space, a vault that separated the waters below from the waters above. What we would call the sky came into being. The world was beginning to take structure, layers, order. Evening passed, morning came. This was the second day. On the third day, God gathered the waters beneath the sky so dry land could appear. Seas formed and solid ground rose up. God named the land earth and the gathered waters seas. Then the earth was told to bring forth life. Grass sprouted, plants grew, trees appeared bearing fruit and seeds. Life was now rooted in the soil itself. Evening passed, morning came. This was the third day. On the fourth day, God created lights in the sky, the sun to govern the day, the moon to govern the night, and stars scattered across the heavens. These lights weren't just decoration, they marked seasons, days, and years. Time became measurable. The sky now told a story every night. Evening passed, morning came. This was the fourth day. On the fifth day, God filled the waters and the sky with living creatures. Fish of every kind moved through the seas. Birds flew across the open sky. Life was no longer quiet. The world had motion and sound. God blessed these creatures, telling them to multiply and fill their domains. Evening passed, morning came. This was the fifth day. Then came the sixth day. God spoke again, and the land brought forth animals, livestock, wild animals, creatures that move along the ground. The earth was now alive in every direction. And then something different happened. God said, "Let us make humanity in our image." This is a turning point in the story. Humanity was not created like the plants or animals. Humans were given a unique role. God formed them to reflect something about himself, male and female, both bearing that image. They were blessed and given responsibility to care for the earth, to steward it, to fill it with life. This wasn't domination, but partnership. Humanity was invited into the work God had begun. God looked at everything he had made, the light, the land, the sky, the living creatures, and humanity, and he saw that it was very good. Evening passed, morning came. This was the sixth day. On the seventh day, God rested, not because he was tired, but because the work was complete. He set this day apart, blessing it. Rest itself became sacred. The rhythm of work and rest was woven into the fabric of creation. Then the story slows down and zooms in. Instead of the whole universe, we are brought into a garden. God formed a man from the dust of the ground and breathed life into him. This image is intimate and tender. Humanity is made from the earth, yet animated by God's own breath. The man was placed in a garden called Eden, filled with rivers, trees, and beauty. He was given work that had meaning, to tend and care for the garden. God saw that it was not good for the man to be alone, so he formed animals and brought them to the man to be named. Naming was an act of understanding and relationship, yet none of the animals were quite right as a companion. So God caused the man to fall into a deep sleep and formed a woman from his side. When the man saw her, he recognized something familiar and equal. They belonged together. They lived in the garden without shame, without fear, and without separation. God walked with them. Life was whole. At the center of the garden were two trees, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The humans were free to eat from every tree except one. This boundary wasn't about control, it was about trust. Could they choose to rely on God rather than defining good and evil for themselves? That question sets the stage for everything that follows. The creation story is not trying to explain science in modern terms. It is answering deeper questions. Who made the world? Why is it ordered? What is humanity's place in it? It tells us that the world is intentional, that humans matter, and that rest, work, and relationship are part of how life was meant to be. When ancient readers heard the word Eden, they wouldn't have pictured a fantasy paradise with clouds and glowing light. They would have imagined something very concrete and earthy. Eden is described as a real place, watered by rivers, full of trees that are pleasant to look at and good for food. It's a place where life flows easily. In a dry, ancient Near Eastern world, a well-watered garden was the image of abundance, safety, and peace. The garden wasn't meant to be a retreat from responsibility. Adam is placed there to work it and take care of it. That matters. Work existed before anything went wrong. It wasn't punishment. It was meaningful participation. The idea is that humans were created to partner with God, to tend what He had made, to help life flourish. God is described as walking in the garden. That's not a technical description, it's relational language. The story is telling us that closeness with God was normal. No fear, no hiding. Conversation and presence were part of everyday life. That's what makes what comes later feel so heavy. Now, the trees. Trees in the ancient world symbolized life, wisdom, and connection between heaven and earth. Roots in the ground, branches reaching upward. At the center of the garden were two special trees. One was the tree of life, representing ongoing life with God. The other was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That phrase, knowledge of good and evil, doesn't mean simple information, like learning facts. In Hebrew thought, to know something often meant to experience it or claim authority over it. This tree represented the right to define good and evil for oneself. In other words, who gets to decide what is right and wrong? The boundary God sets is small. You may eat from any tree except this one. The garden is full of yeses with one no. The question beneath it is trust. Will humans trust God's definition of what is good, or will they want that power for themselves? Adam and Eve are also described as naked and unashamed. That's more than physical. It means they had nothing to hide, no fear of being seen, no self-consciousness, no brokenness in their relationship with each other or with God. Vulnerability was safe. Then the serpent appears. In ancient storytelling, the serpent represents chaos, deception, and the voice that questions order. Notice what it does. It doesn't deny God outright. It twists His words slightly. Did God really say? That's often how doubt enters, not as rebellion at first, but as suspicion. The serpent suggests that God is holding something back, that eating the fruit will make them wise and independent. The fruit looks good, desirable, useful, and in that moment the choice isn't about hunger, it's about trust and autonomy. When they eat, the immediate result isn't enlightenment, it's awareness of vulnerability. Shame enters the story for the first time. They cover themselves, they hide. When God comes walking in the garden, they are afraid. The relationship that was once open is now fractured. What's striking is God's response. He doesn't abandon them. He asks questions. Where are you? Not because He doesn't know, but because relationship is breaking, and He invites honesty. There are consequences, yes. Life becomes harder. Work becomes painful. Relationships strain. Humanity is sent out of the garden. But even here there is care. God makes clothing for them. He ensures they survive outside Eden. The story holds both loss and mercy together. For ancient readers, this wasn't just about the first humans, it was about all humans. Why is life hard? Why do we feel shame? Why do we want control but struggle with it? Genesis is saying these things have deep roots. And yet, the garden remains in the background of the entire Bible. The longing for restoration, for life, for closeness with God never disappears. What part of the garden story sticks with you the most right now? The trees, the walking with God, the choice, or the sense of loss afterward?